Hey guys, so I just finished my 1860 Roughneck with Hydroturf. This is their swamp camo. Um, it's been a pretty good product. It really wasn't all that difficult to install. I did about half of it myself or so. I did this by myself, where it was all pretty rectangular pieces to cut and fit. Wasn't difficult. Your bow deck, if you have one, and your rear deck. However, I will say if you have the opportunity to have someone help you, that is definitely a must. There's a lot of install videos out there that go really, really in depth on how to install. So I won't get too much into that, but just kind of a couple pointers for the way I did mine. I'll tell you some of the mistakes that I made, and then hopefully you don't make the same. So for the front, actually for the entirety of the boat, rather than doing just pushing it in there and cutting it to fit when it was in place, which you absolutely can do, and it would probably be easier to do if you were running a just a flat bottom interior part of the boat, right? Without the decks, without the console, you could probably make that work. I wanted my seams to fit perfect. So what I did instead was I took the 36-inch wide, oh God, what do they call it? Hardware paper that you'd put down like in a walkway to a door if you're doing construction. You don't want to scuff the floor. Pretty thick, about construction paper thickness, perhaps a little bit more than that. And I ripped it down in half. I laid it out, finding the center line of the boat itself, so that it would be the factory edge of the paper. I ran it as close as I could to the tapered edge, and then taped together another angled straight piece, essentially, and then to kind of capture that, running it all the way to the front. And no matter what your boat looks like, no matter how square and how perfect the angles are, it's not. It's absolutely not. So that's another reason to do a paper or cardboard template first, is that this half of the boat running a perfect midline was off just a few degrees as opposed to that side there. Where that difference was made up was it appeared to be mostly in this front part here. But if I were to just blindly assume that one half was the same as the other, cut my two sides and throw them in, I would have been very sorely disappointed, and I would have had a huge gap. Probably about half an inch or so by the time I got from my perfect straight to over here. So take your time, do your templates. You'll be much, much, much happier. That being said, I did cover the whole thing. So the boat itself, 1860, it took 4 sheets of foam, and I had some extra, so I did my trailer, and I ended up with that much left over. So not really a whole lot. But anyway, when it came to the deck, so cut my piece after I did the template, set it in. I didn't do separate templates for the cabinet doors. I laid it all as one sheet, and then one tool I definitely recommend so you have a better feel for where your slots are is an awl. So this whole thing was one piece of foam. I went to one corner, poked a hole, went to the other corner, found it, poked a hole, and then ran my razor on one side, and then came to the other, ran it back the other way. The reason that I recommend using an awl is, I'll show you my one oopsie where I did not do that. And the hinges are the openings in the side of your cabinets are actually pretty easy to cut out. But where the awl really shines is where your hinges are, because it will feel like your blade is in that groove, but it's not. So this was my first cut in the boat on a cabinet hinge. And without using the awl, you can see where it felt like, because this is really, I mean, this does not bend very well, so there's no feel. And without the awl, I just assumed it felt like my blade was in the groove and I was running down along, and lo and behold, I was not. So I don't like to look at that. That kind of pisses me off. But definitely use that, do some poking and prodding, find exactly where you are, and then more accurately run your knife. I didn't run into that anywhere else. The next little pro tip that I'll say is that when you're cutting your pieces, because you don't want, let me grab another sheet here. You don't want your grooves to misalign. So when you're cutting your center pieces, the best thing to do is to match up on what I call the flat and then the valley, right? So you want to find a perfect flat 90-degree corner in order to start. So for the back here, we'll say half and half. Start on the outer edge of a flat. So you'll cut your straight edge all the way down on that flat. And then when you go to butt them up, let's pretend that this here is a perfect valley. It's not. Then on your next half of your piece, cut it on the outside edge of your valley so that when you go to butt them up, the pattern continues and you don't have, let's say a wider flat, right? Otherwise it would look like that, and then your pattern continues. You'd be able to see that seam more evidently. It's better if you cut into a valley, and that way it hides it quite well. Another must-have tool is either getting yourself a 48-inch straight edge like this, if you have access to, a same or larger just bar stock or something, as long as you can prove that it's a perfectly 90-degree on the corners and perfectly straight, even better. The longest pieces I had to cut, the floorboard here, I want to say was somewhere in the 80-inch range, which was almost the entirety of the sheet. Then the less times you have to move that straight edge, the more perfect of a cut you're going to get. So another pro tip, when lining up to cut on that straight edge, if you just assume that putting your straight edge on the edge of that flat is going to be perfect, it's not. So what I did was I flipped my blade around and I used that to fill that valley, and then to better center that straight edge, let me adjust here. I'd fill that valley, put my straight edge against it and run it down, and that would perfectly flush the straight edge against the edge of that channel. And then when I cut, I'm doing this with one hand, so it's not a perfect representation. But then when I cut, it would be perfectly flush against that, run my blade down, and it would be the same for every single cut. So this would be my gauge to align my straight edge. I hope that makes sense. When you go to also cut, it is also extremely important that you take into account that you don't want that blade at any bit of an angle, or you will see that in your cuts. I don't really think it's too visible from this light. You can see on this cabinet right here, my blade slightly tilted, and by slightly, I mean just a millimeter or two. And you can tell where it was going perfect, and then right there, the blade canted over and then made a really ugly cut. So that is the second area of my job that it drives me nuts. I hate looking at that because it was just a dumb mistake. So far so good. I haven't had any problems with peeling or anything. I did not use a spray adhesive on it. I just used the 3M that comes on it. Prep is absolutely key. I took it out into the front yard and used a 1-to-1 dilution of Simple Green and just slathered it on the deck. I let it sit for probably 5 to 10 minutes or so, and then took a clean broom. Make sure you don't use a dirty broom, even use it in your garage. You don't want to introduce any oils. I got a clean, stiff bristled broom and went through and just scrubbed every inch of the deck, pushing that Simple Green into there, and then hosed it off really well. And then when I thought I hosed it off well, I did it for about 15 more minutes and let it dry for 2 to 3 days. I live in North Idaho, so it's March, but it's still very cold. Made sure I let it dry for several days, and then after that was done, I went through and I wiped everything down with denatured alcohol. And that further degreased everything. After everything was fully degreased and when it came time to install, I did not wear shoes in the boat when I was doing it. I put on some really thick hiking socks. Your shoes are going to have oils and God knows what else you pick up walking on the street and stuff. So again, after all that work, you don't want to introduce any variables that would prohibit your adhesive from sticking. So definitely recommend just wearing socks. And then as you go along, I had a small bottle of rubbing alcohol. I'd squirt some in the bottom, and if I notice like a scuff or something like that, probably overkill. But this was about 3 days worth of work, and I didn't want to have to do it again. So another recommendation there. It's pretty cold still, like I said. So the install temp in my garage, I had a couple oil heaters running, and it was probably, I may have been lucky to get it into the low 60s in here. And this stuff it wasn't very pliable at that temp. So if I had to do it again, I probably would have waited at least until it was in the definitely in the high 60s, 70s would have been perfect. And then, this stuff would definitely lay a little bit better. Right now it's probably in the 50s out here, and this isn't, you can see it's not very flexible, right? It's still pretty rigid at this temp. So, very, very temperature sensitive in that sense. After you get it in, another recommendation I would make is get steal your wife's or go buy your own rolling pin, and go over everything with that, especially in the seams, right, where these cabinet edges are. It's easy when you're walking to push everything down, but these seams here are kind of a different story. So I went to, I don't know, whatever it was, TJ Maxx or something, and got a rolling pin, and I'd roll it over those seams like that to push it all down. Once I did, I haven't had any problems with it. I've taken it out fishing a few times since, and no issues there at all whatsoever. Pretty impressed with it. This swamp camo does have a gray tint to it. I kind of wasn't super happy with it. I emailed them after I opened the package, and they said it's normal. It's supposed to cut down on the glare. So I guess that's really my only complaint about the product itself. Well, anyway, good luck with your guys' install. To sum up, templates where you can. Cardboard is best. Measure 4 times, cut once. 4 sheets for the whole boat put me in the hole about, with tax, free shipping at that rate, but with tax it was just a hair under $600. So, and then another probably $40 in prep materials and whatnot. You want to make sure you do it right. Take out all of your hinges. Don't assume that you're going to be able to do it properly. So cut out your rivets, pull it out, slap it down, cut out where it is, and put it back in. One more section. So that one up front, I was able to remove the seat plate. This one here, the factory screws were stripped. I wasn't going to remove it. This one here, I attempted to just cut around it and you can see it's not perfect. So, you know, you probably want to definitely see the difference here. That one there sits nicely on top. Anyway, good luck out there, guys. Good fishing this year to you.